Hello, I want to share with you all why I have been really focusing on Venus's meeting with the waning moon and how that is significant for us collectively and individually, and the best practices in connecting with this energy if you are really just intrigued and fascinated with this particular cycle and practice. And so I want to start with sharing why I began focusing on this, and just my connection with Venus. And so this has begun, I would say, I mean, probably since the beginning of my incarnation in this lifetime, but more specifically, unconsciously, I would say this began in 2017 and about early 2018. 2017 was a major shift for me. It was a point in which I just had this whole crazy mind-blowing experience with just some spiritual teachings that I came across. And I had decided that I was like, now's the time I'm going to quit my day job, which was waiting tables at the time. And I was like, I'm going to completely devote myself to the path. I know that I want to focus on my spiritual practice, focus on astrology and astronomy. And I want to just share everything that I've been learning. And so my commitment or my vow to myself was I was going to begin this, or I was going to quit my job and begin the year 2018 in this devoted path. And I held myself to it and I did that. And it was really, really amazing. I mean, it was definitely challenging, but it was just, I woke up every day. I did a deep meditation. I journaled. I played with my cards. It was very hermit mode kind of experience as well. And that year in the spring, I had also began facilitating a women's circle that just kind of fell into place with a friend of mine at the time. And within our women's circles, this was a very important time, especially starting to connect with, you could say, like the Venus energy, being that it was called Luna Goddess Circle, which is so fun. And it was focused on connecting with the goddesses of the moon, doing rituals in alignment with the full new and full moon. And yeah, just deepening our connection with our divine feminine aspect and the divine in its wholeness. And so we had 3 cycles. The first cycle was in the spring, the second one was in the summer, and then the third one was in the fall. And that fall circle, the focus was on choosing a goddess that we wanted to embody and deciding or identifying what value or virtue that was in alignment with that goddess we were really vibrating with, we are embodying. And so at that time, mine was self-reliance, mine was worthiness. And when we think about Venus, Venus rules Taurus, Venus rules Libra. And that Taurus connection is the self-reliance, the security, the self-worth, the self-care, the just survival and what feels good, what are our comfort zones, like, or what's the creature comfort, like how do we sustain ourselves, right? That is that first, in my opinion, like really most important aspect of Venus. And then when we think about the Libra aspect, that is how we relate to one another, that is how we bring in harmony or bring these two energies together and coexist and experience love and the beauty that we so much, very much so value. We're sharing that with another, right? And how do we hold space or have this connection within unconditional love? So that in itself was something I was just really unconsciously stepping into. So life happened. I got pregnant in 2019. At the end of December 2019, I had my daughter. And being a mother was just a whole new perspective. It was of course, like transitioning from maiden to mother. And I truly experienced unconditional love. And I had the awareness. I was like, wow, the love that I feel for my child, that is unconditional. Like no matter what she does, no matter, who she seeks to be, like I'm going to have her back. I'm going to love her unconditionally. And so I began really looking to see, I'm like, well, does that show up in, like, wasn't seeing that in any other aspect of my relationships of my life. And so I'm like, well, what is unconditional love? And I started just really wanting to dig deeper. And so naturally, I started looking more into Venus. And I was deepening my study with Hellenistic astrology. And of course, reflecting on my own birth chart, I'm learning about planetary dignities. And I look at my chart and I'm like, my most dignified planet is Venus, which means Venus is in the sign of Pisces. Venus is said to be exalted in Pisces, meaning that it is in its highest honor. It expresses its energy at a high vibration. And then Venus in my birth chart is in the fifth house, which is of creativity, of children, of pleasure, romance, just all the good vibes. It's literally called the house of good fortune or the place of good fortune in ancient astrology or Hellenistic astrology. And Venus rejoices in this house. She's celebrated, she's like in her happiest state. So I was just like, wow, okay, this makes so much sense. I want to dig more into this. And I really want to amplify this, being that Venus was in Pisces um no, it was early this year, along with Jupiter and the moon. And I did a whole ritual and things of that nature. But I just have been on this journey of connecting more deeply with Venus. Also learning that Hathor is also in connection with the Venus energy, and she's the cosmic mother. And that's been a guide for me, and just like it's something I've been seeking to embody. So that is how this really began, how this journey began to expand. And for the collective, or just as an individual in working with this Venus cycle, why it's significant is because this is an experience or a cycle in which we can really witness the ongoing journey of learning and experiencing unconditional love. And of course, again, it starts with that, having that within yourself. And then once you have this experience, or once you learn and dive deep, then you will then see that reflected in the outer world, within your relationships and what you create. So again, or I didn't say it yet, but this is that as above, so below, as within, so without. And so hopefully this in general will inspire you to really sit and reflect on your own virtues and values at this time, and maybe look at your own birth chart and reflect and see if there's anything in your chart that really amplifies that, or maybe there's just a planet that you want to connect with deeper. And then you can learn their synodic cycle, or just what cycle they have, and just how the energy ebb and flows and what they have to teach and offer you. And I will say, I'm stepping into, I feel this coming year, I'm going to be focusing on Saturn. And so that's going to be pretty interesting. I'm so Saturn ruled. It's crazy. Saturn is another one of my dominant planets. So I'm not surprised. It's like, and I like Venus Saturn energy. I just, that's a whole nother video. All right. So the Venus synodic cycle is basically, and let me get my notes so I can have this very clear. The Venus synodic cycle, right, is the time that Venus takes to be seen again from Earth in the same position with respect to the sun, right? So we're witnessing the meetings of Venus and the sun, and those meetings of Venus and the sun and where she is in proximity to the sun really determines her, if she's visible or not. And so this is again, really speaking of our own sense of being seen and heard, and also going into the darker, to really connect with the darker aspects of ourselves that are hidden, that are unseen, so we can show love and compassion and nurture for that. And I want to say that there is actually a myth that perfectly tells the journey of this Venus synodic cycle. It's the myth of Inanna. And so it talks about how it tells the tale of how Venus meets with the sun, right? That official meeting, which is when Venus is retrograde, when she has that interior conjunction with the sun, and the conjunction means meeting or alignment. She has that alignment or meeting with the sun, and this is starting the cycle when she's retrograde. And whenever a planet, or really when you think about the Mercury cazimi, the Venus cazimi, which I'm sure if you follow my work, you've heard me speak of, those are very auspicious, potent times, because when a planet is in that exact meeting place with the sun, they receive gifts, they take on that divine intelligence, that divine light, and it really, it just really, they shine, they radiate, right? That's the way the ancients perceive that. And so when it's happened, when it's retrograde, that is the peak of the retrograde cycle. That's the like awakening. And you're just like, oh my goodness, it's like an aha moment, when you've spent a period of reflection. And so when Venus is retrograde and meets with the sun, has that conjunction, that is the beginning of the synodic cycle. And then where was I going with this? Okay, thinking about Inanna, and you can Google this myth if you want to go deep with it. But basically, she takes on this divine intelligence. She gains these gifts and powers. She feels very confident, and this is when Venus is stepping into that morning phase, right? So the maiden, just brave and courageous. She decides to go journey into the underworld to meet her sister, the queen of the underworld. Which, the way I perceive it, is that she's going to essentially meet a dark aspect of herself, the shadow aspect of herself that is a bit hidden and a little bit scary. And so as she descends into the underworld, she loses her powers. She loses, and there are 7 gates that she passes through that correlate to the 7 moons, right? And so this is when this is why I point to the 7 moon conjunctions or meetings that Venus has with the moon, because this is the point in which we are guided to focus on an energy center. And this is when we can, in this case, when Venus meets with the waning moon, the focus is on letting go and surrendering. And so she's moving into the underworld. So we're releasing blocks to the energy centers. So let me go ahead and, again, I'm going to share my screen so you can get a visual of what I'm talking about. Okay, so here we are sharing the screen. And okay, so if you can see this here, this is Venus's entire cycle. This is the interior conjunction. This is the conjunction when Venus meets with the sun when she's retrograde. And this whole cycle is about 584 days. And this meeting here, this conjunction, is when Venus is not retrograde. And this is the peak of this whole synodic cycle, right? And so on this side here, when you see this number 9 months, it's interesting, right? That whole correlation to the mother and the pregnancy being 9 months and so forth, and that gestation period. So it's just so many synchronicities. I love it. But 7 out of the 9 months, Venus is visible. And she has her conjunction here when she's retrograde. She descends into the underworld. She begins her descent. And every conjunction with the waning moon corresponds to an energy center or her moving through a gate. And every time she gets to the gate, she has to release, in the story, there's a releasing of just her different powers or just different things that are valuable to her, such as her lapis lazuli jewels and things of that nature. Her, I think her, what do you call it? Breastplate. Here you go, sweetie. Okay. And so watch your finger, watch your hand. And so, yeah, so those 7 months correspond to her visibility. And so on this end, when she is descending into the underworld, which is like she's going here to this exterior conjunction of the sun, she is meeting with the waning moon, indicating that there's a letting go, a surrender, a release. And then she has this conjunction with the sun when she's not retrograde, and you can see it says invisible for 50 days. This means that this is the point in which she is in the underworld. She's having her whole situation with her sister, aka her dark shadow self. There is a death. She's hung on a meat hook. She dies. She is reborn through the help of, it's the whole story. I believe it's not Mercury, obviously, in their myth, but and like similar, whatever Mercury is to in that myth. But again, I said before, you can look deeper into this myth by just Googling it. And so with that said, she dies and is reborn. She's coming out on this end. She gains visibility. and she has 7 meetings with the waxing moon, indicating that she is receiving, she's taking in energy, she's gaining back her power, and it's going to correspond to the chakra centers or the energy centers. So I just wanted to show you that so you can get some sort of a visual. And so, with that said, again, this is the whole experience and reflected in our own lives of how we have these ongoing cycles of going deeper within ourselves, facing hidden aspects of ourselves that are invisible, sitting with that, showing compassion and love, experiencing that death and rebirth, coming out, gaining that energy back, and coming back into connection with our outside world and what we're creating and who we're relating to. So the best practices in working with this Venus synodic cycle is, of course, paying attention to the whole cycle. The beginning of the cycle being her conjunction with the sun when she's retrograde. Then, as she descends into the, or I should say like this, descends into the underworld, those meetings with the waning moon is focused on letting go and surrendering, right? And it corresponds to the 7 chakra centers. So, releasing any blocks to those centers, and then paying attention to the period in which she has the conjunction with the sun, where she's invisible for about 50 days. That is that transformative period. And again, see what's coming up for you. And then as she starts to ascend and becomes an evening star, she's gaining back her powers. And what can you take in and receive that will really enhance and elevate those particular energy centers? And so really the focus is on unconditional love and balance and receiving and self-acceptance and self-care and self-love, all of those Venus virtues. And so taking it even deeper, you can see where this is all taking place in your birth chart as she has the meetings with the moons, with the different moon, either in the waning or the waxing phase, and really see what is blocked or what you can take in, what you can release or take in correspondence to those particular areas of life in your chart. Again, you can deepen that with rituals and meditations that will help to enhance or ground in your intention at that time. And then always, always, always journal and reflect upon what has come up for you. And so I just want to speak to the cycle that we're in. That beginning of the cycle took place when Venus retrograde had a conjunction with the sun in Capricorn. And so the beginning of that, or that initiation or intention, I should say intention more so, is really having us focus on one, vulnerability, and the vulnerability or the ability to really create new foundations within our relationships. Oh, the world. Um, yeah, creating new foundations within our relationships that are more secure, that are more long lasting, that allow us to be vulnerable and to, yeah, just a space of comfort and growth. And then when this cycle peaks, Venus meets with the sun as in not being retrograde, right? So the peak of the cycle where she goes through the death and rebirth aspect experience, that will be taking place in Libra. And so that is like that pure essence and strength of Venus and correspondent to relationships, to finding balance, finding peace and harmony within yourself and the outside world. So that is just kind of like a snippet on how to work with the energy and what we can expect, why it's significant for us collectively and individually. I'll definitely be talking more about this as we're in the flow of the journey, as I have been. So if you're new to my channel, please like and subscribe to my channel so you can stay up to date. You can sign up for my email list below. If you want some mentoring or guidance with this specifically, we can definitely set up a consultation where we can work together one-on-one, and you can do that via the information below this video. Again, thank you so much for your support. Thank you for watching this video, and I will talk to you again soon.